Now, guys, we are entering home improvement season. Better weather, longer days, and more schedule flexibility means higher demand for home projects. Joining us now to help us out with some great renovation tips to save you time, money, and stress is home care expert at Angie, Mallory MyStitch. Hi, Mallory.
Hi, Ashley. Thanks for having me on. It's from one roller coaster to another.
I know, right? So you got to tell me, how can we set ourselves up for a successful and low-stress home renovation? Because they can get crazy.
Oh, I mean, it can literally be a roller coaster. So at Angie, we know there are definitely some things that you can do to help take some of that anxiety and stress out of the process. It's things like planning ahead, knowing when to hire a pro versus DIY. It's doing your research and asking a lot of questions. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. It's things like setting a realistic budget. And lastly, and really importantly, it's communicating with the contractor, the pro that you hire, to set those healthy boundaries that are really going to establish a good working relationship. Sometimes we forget that, especially on a home reno project, a pro, it's kind of a relationship that we enter into, and healthy boundaries are good.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, sometimes that time period, they say it's going to take 2 weeks and then it takes 2 months. So
Oh,
you're right.
yeah.
That is definitely a relationship. But, you know, in 2022 with Google and everything, everyone thinks that they can do it themselves. So how do you decide when you can DIY or when you should call that pro?
Yeah, you know what? Google, YouTube, TikTok, there are a lot of places out there where it just seems like, man, I can do a project like that, but it is not so. We talked to a lot of people, about 1,000 people that took on some major home reno projects, and a lot of those people tried some DIYs. And of those DIYers, over 50% said that they ended up causing some really expensive damage. So it's a good idea to know your limits. How do you know your limits? I have a really easy test. It's ask yourself, do I have the time, the tools, and the talent to do this project? If you don't have all three, it is not the DIY for you. So at the end of the day, remember the 3 T's: time, tool, talent. You need all three for a successful DIY.
Now, see, that's what I'm talking about. I love that. 3 T's: time, tools, and talent. That's really easy for everybody out there to remember. But, you know, sometimes these things can get very expensive. Do you have any tips for us, like when it comes to budgeting, and especially for major renovations?
Yeah, look, I mean, budget is front of mind for a lot of people right now. We're hearing all about inflation and increased prices and costs for things. So yes, absolutely. And budgeting and finance causes a lot of anxiety and stress, especially when taking on a major renovation. So things like setting a clear budget, but really doing that by talking to your contractor. That contractor or pro, they're your boots on the ground. They know what is fluctuating in real time, and they're going to be one of your best resources from the very beginning to setting a really solid budget. And then we also absolutely 100% recommend setting a buffer of around 10% for those expected unexpected. The one thing, tried and true, any type of major renovation project or even minor, you're going to come across some things that you don't plan for. Having that 10% buffer in your budget is really going to help you in totality stay on budget. And the last thing that I recommend, especially when taking on a large improvement project, and with a spouse or a significant other where quarrels might happen, talk ahead of time about the things that are must-haves and things that you just don't want to move out of your budget, and the things that you're maybe willing to push off for another time or be more flexible with. That way, when in real time some of these issues come up, you already have an action plan in place and you know where you're going to shift things around within your budget. So
Absolutely.
with some planning, you can do it.
We see it all the time in our lives and on HGTV, girl. Can you tell us where we can go for more information?
Oh man, isn't that true? Yes, check out the Angie app or go to Angie.com where you can find pros, hire pros, see pricing info, and get a whole slew of more tips to really know that you can take on this project with confidence.
All right, we love it. Angie.com. Thank you so much for being here, Mallory. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, guys, now it is time for our first